I'm excited to be giving this class today with my husband. We're learning about parenting. I have two books that I like. This is really practical. I like Miriam Levy a lot. Effective Jewish Parenting, fantastic book. She has another book called When Children Fight, and that's also fabulous. She's just really practical and gives a lot of good advice, and I really enjoy her. Miriam Adahan, this is not a very recent book, Raising Children to Care. She's coming from a more of like, she's a psychologist, and she's coming from a more like, she's a little less of the practical, more like the ideas and concepts. Also very wonderful ideas to learn from. So anyway, these are both sitting on my shelf. But I would say like the practical stuff, I really do like her very much. I'm going to start with just a little idea about, from the Parsha, we just finished Vayera, and we see that Avraham was sitting, and he had just had his bris milah, and he was not very comfortable, and Hashem is talking to him, and basically a bikur cholim to Avraham, right? But anyway, so it says, Hashem appeared to him in the plains of Mamre while he was sitting at the entrance of the tent in the heat of the day. He was sitting in the entrance of this tent because he was like waiting for guests, like, you know how much he's very chesed oriented, and he's like waiting for the guests to come, even though he's like really not feeling so well. And Hashem is talking with him, and hopefully, like, you know, Hashem is keeping his mind off of his pain, and you know, so Hashem is doing chesed for Avraham. We think of Avraham as the quintessential giver. And we see that Hashem is talking with him. And all of a sudden, these three guests, and he sees that Hashem sees that Avraham is like not going to give up on his pursuit of guests. And he's just, so he does another chesed for Avraham, and he sends him guests. And he sends the three visitors, you know, the three Arabs that are really malachim, that are really angels. And we see that Avraham says, you know, just a minute, Hashem, you know, basically, and goes and greets these strangers who are passing. And I mean, you know, and so we see the chesed that Hashem does for Avraham. We see that Avraham is Mr. Chesed, of course, and, you know, is running to do these mitzvahs, even though he's not comfortable and in pain. It says it was the third day after his bris, which is supposedly the most painful after any surgery. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that because I've had some surgery. I don't know if the third day was necessarily the worst. But anyway, so it says that, you know, he was very uncomfortable in this, but still he wanted to do this chesed. And so we see how important chesed is. That if you, here it is, Avraham is sitting, talking with Hashem. Hashem is, you know, and he's having this, you know, divine conversation with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And he's like, oh, just a minute, I have to do something more important than talking with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I have to go feed these strangers, you know. So it seems so funny to us, you know, as like, really? But we do see the value of chesed, and we see how anxious he was to really jump on that opportunity to do chesed. And so, of course, you know, as our, you know, role models that the avos and the imahos are for us, we also want to be learning to be balei chesed, to be doing chesed whenever we can, and to seek that opportunity. So that's just taking that idea of chesed, and now we're going to talk about parenting and talking about how we want to be in our homes and how we want to transfer Jewish ideals to our children. We're just going to talk about chesed, since that seems to be like a big part of the Parsha, and of course a big part of a Jewish home and Jewish parenting. One thing that we know when there's two ways to give. Let's say I have a carafe of orange juice, and I have a bunch of cups, and I want to pour the juice into the cups. I can pour the juice from the carafe into the cups, and now all the little cups have juice, and what's with the carafe? It's empty. Another way of giving the juice to the cups would be to put the little cups around the carafe and continue to pour into the carafe in the middle, and then that carafe of juice will overflow and pour into the little cups. Right? Now the cups will be filled, however the carafe will not be empty, the carafe will also be full. when we as Jewish moms and Jewish dads are giving to our children, sometimes like giving. Sometimes you're like so exhausted, and you feel you could be depleted yourself, right? That would be the empty carafe. The juice is filled into all the little cups, but the carafe of juice is empty. Now I'm a shmata. However, we can fill the little cups in a different way, where we continue to fill ourselves, and we overflow, and then give into our children, and so we pour into the little cups, but we remain full. We have to continue to give to ourselves as well, so that we don't become depleted. So we have to think of ways that will continue to nurture ourselves, so that we don't turn into just empty carafes, empty vessels of whatever, of ourselves, and we continue to fulfill things that we need to be happy and giving and intellectually stimulated, whatever the things are that keep our juices alive and going, so that we don't become depleted, so we can continue to fill ourselves. That could be going to classes, whether it's Torah classes or classes in our professions or things that make us happy, hobbies that we have, exercise classes, whatever the things are that make us feel fulfilled and full and happy. We need to continue to nurture ourselves as well. And that's not to say at the expense of everybody else. However, we have to remember that we're people too, and we cannot just turn into, these empty vessels that are, just rags that are exhausted all the time. We have to remember to continue to fill our own vessel as well. Being new parents, which some of you are, some of you are not yet, whatever, but the transition from being a single to being a married person, of course, is one of the most humongous, transitions that a person can go through, of going from just being a me and I, a singular, to being a we and us, a plural. And then once you have children in the picture, that us and we becomes expanded to even more. And this is a way that Hashem is helping us to grow. It's not, we have an understanding of different relationships between, just thinking of ourselves. We have this opportunity to grow and to think of others. And now our us becomes a bigger us when we have children in the picture, and becomes a bigger opportunity for us to think of others, so that it's not just like what's good for me, but it's what's good for us. And will that all fit into the balance of the whole family and everything like this? These are parts of our growth as Jews, as humans, as men, as women. We want to take that opportunity to grow and expand ourselves. This is a tremendous chesed that Hashem does, not because He wants us to be rags and shmatas for our children, but for us to grow and have this opportunity to understand what real giving is, and to understand that it's not just all about ourselves, but about expanding ourselves to thinking of others. Now, how do we do that in our families? How do we do this for our kids? We want to transition ourselves from being takers to givers, because when we're just our singular selves, we can be sort of just thinking about ourselves. And then once we become an us and a we have to become more of givers, right? And now when we have children, of course, our giving and our thinking of others has to expand more. Sorry, I forgot to turn off my phone. Now, I remember when my first child was very young, and I don't have any siblings, and so, being extremely inexperienced, even though I was a counselor for years with camps and this and that, some of the things that are normal, I didn't really know, what's normal, what's not. I have some expectations of what my child should be like, and being so perfect, and whatever. And I remember complaining to Rebbe Tznotelski, who was a phenomenal teacher, and she's the daughter of Rav Scheinberg, and she would go around to different neighborhoods and teach Chinuch Banim classes, educating children classes, and she was the wife of my husband's Rav in Torah Or. Tremendous person. Anyway, I called her up, and I'm like exasperated. My daughter doesn't like to share, and she's so selfish, and she's getting and Rav Tznotelski's was laughing at me, like, you expect her to share? You expect her to want to share? And I was like, yeah. You know? I was like, I know, you know, the first lesson of being like, what are you expecting from this little child? So we have to know that, you know, children are not born being chesed givers, you know, chesed oriented. They have to learn it. We have to help them to and educate them to want to share. It's definitely not a normal instinct to want to share, and to be thinking of others. That's not, you know, so, but we of course want to cultivate that in our children and in ourselves as well, but that's another story. Hopefully we're very perfect in all regard, but, you know, we don't need any work now, we're just going to give to our children. But anyway, so we want to work on ourselves too on that, but certainly we want to cultivate this midah of chesed in our children. So first of all, we have to understand that, you know, it's normal for kids to not want to share, because why? Plain logic is, the more I give, the less I have, right? You know, we are material beings in a material world where it's the more I give, that means I have less. I don't want to have less. I want to have what I have. The Jewish idea, of course, is to transcend that and to go above that, to say the more I give, the more I am. The more that our children give, the more that they are. This is an idea that's going to be, you know, always a work in progress of showing our children that we can, even if I have less candy or I have less toys, I'm a bigger person, I am kind, I am giving, and I'm making that other child happy. That is in itself having more. And to have such a lofty concept for such a small child, of course, you know, we can't expect that from birth. They don't come out of the womb thinking that way. But this is something that we're going to work on with our children, and it's you know, and it goes from when they're very young, and it changes and manifests itself, this teaching of giving, in different stages of their lives. When they're toddlers, they're ready to hear a different level of that idea. When they're in elementary school or middle school and high school, you know, these ideas continue to develop, where there can be giving of themselves in different ways, whether it's seeing that there's a new kid in the class that just moved into the neighborhood and taking that child under their wing kind of and helping them along, or when they're in high school and taking on some kind of a project like working on a blood drive or something like, you know, that's, you know, that they can have fun with, but that it's something that's transcending the me and the I, but going into a greater, to do something for a greater good. And then of course as adults, which is our goal, is to raise functioning, chesed-oriented, good, menschlich people that will be givers in our society. You know, so this is something that is our obligation, our responsibility as parents, to cultivate this. And, you know, so as they grow in different stages of their development, that then they become these adults that we can have a lot of nachas from at some point. But it's all stages, and we go with the ages and stages of where they're at. So first of all, I would say that a big thing in teaching our children about chesed, of being givers, is certainly modeling it ourselves. Our kids, they say, you know, learn so much from watching what we do. It's not as much what we say, but what we do. If we tell them one thing and we do something else, they're smart. They understand that, you know, we do what mommy or daddy do, and we act like them. And a lot of times the talk will just be like, wah, 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 wah. You know, Charlie Brown's, you know, the adults in the Charlie Brown cartoons, you know, they're wah, 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 wah. They don't even understand. And they're like, whatever you're saying, it doesn't matter. But I'm seeing what you're doing, and I want to be like my mommy, and I want to be like my daddy, and this is how to act, and this is how to react in certain situations. And they will learn a lot more from what you do than what you say a lot of times. Certainly, you know, we hear about positive reinforcement. A smile goes a long way when we see them doing something good. You know, it's, again, not necessarily what you say, it's what you do. So, you know, when we smile at them and when we model good behavior, we are teaching them so much. a child, like I said in another class just as a comment, was that children instinctively do want to please you. They want to make mommy and daddy happy. This is that is instinct. They are born with that. They are born, even a small baby will respond to a smiling face over the crib. So we know that that's true. They love to be loved, right? So how do we show them love? Smiling and giving to them and all of this. But now we want to also teach them, we want to model for them this idea of chesed. So, okay, first of all, in terms of modeling chesed in the home, certainly our modeling chesed towards them, but also towards our spouses. This is very key in teaching them how to be kind, how to be nice, right? And a very big way that a child will learn, that we learn chesed, is that we empathize with another person, what they need or what they want or how they feel. And once we can teach the child to empathize, the chesed will come naturally as well. Because once you are showing the child that if let's say a child is feeling unhappy because they want a certain toy that they can't reach, it's up on a shelf, and even something like you saying to a child and saying, I see you're so unhappy because you can't reach that toy. Here, I'm going to give it to you. This is chesed. And even though they're young, they're understanding that you're responding to their need for that toy and that they feel sad from that toy. You're empathizing with their pain, and that is why I'm giving you the toy. Not because they're crying and just be quiet already. All right, I'll give you the toy. That's just, actually rewarding bad behavior because they're crying, they're screaming, they're making noise. Okay, if I cry and scream and make noise, I'm going to get my toy. No, that would be the wrong message. I'm giving you the toy not to shut you up, but because I feel your pain and I want to make you happy, that's why I'm giving you the toy. Those are two different messages.
They can discern the difference between the two?
You know what? I think kids are a lot smarter than we give them credit for.
I think they definitely can. And it's very hard to do it too.
We can show a lot from our expressions on our face. I mean, my husband and kids have always told me that I have a very expressive face and they can always read my mind from looking at my face. Hi! How are you? But I think that when we show them that we're just aggravated and we just are, fed up or whatever, and we just want to, they can tell the difference between that and like, oh, sure, oh, you want this toy, and you give them with a smile, that's going to have a very different message.
It's similar in classrooms. Like if a child's upset, another child says something or whatever, sometimes we brush it off, but really it's like, no, that must have been really frustrating or must have been really painful. And sometimes when that doesn't happen, the child internalizes that from a very young age and then acts out or does all different things. So this is like making sense to me.
They do get it, because sometimes if she's upset about something and I can't change it, then the best I can do is say, I see you're really frustrated. I'm sorry you're frustrated. And I mean, it doesn't mean she...
enough Cheerios for 4 bowls, Miriam.
Doesn't mean it gets it immediately. But
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't mean she's like, oh, okay. But for sure that has more an effect than like, I can't, I'm sorry, like...
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I think also even in counseling, when we learn counseling skills, we talk about active listening.
right.
That's a term of like, just reinforcing like, I understand where you're coming from. And kids do respond to that, even if you can't change their reality, like I can't give you that or I can't make something happen I can't make that happen. But understanding where they're coming from and empathizing with their pain goes a long way. And at a very young age, kids can understand. They may not have the vocabulary to express themselves, and even if you say to them these big words, they may not really understand. But you want to speak on their level and speak to how they can understand you, and just giving them a hug and saying, oh, I wish I could get that for you, but I really can't. I want to have, that big, my kids always wanted those big riding toys that, like a big Jeep that you could see in these big toy stores that like, we lived in an apartment, okay? Like, there ain't no way. What am I gonna do with such a thing? You know, but of course that was like what they always wanted, you know? And I was the mean mommy that I could never say, okay, you know, what on earth would I do with such a thing? You can smash it into the china cabinet all you want, honey. Yeah. You know, there were certain things you can't. You know, I was like, oh, I also wish I could get that for you. There's a certain place where it's like, you know, then there, you can go into an imagination game of like, oh, imagine if we had like a big farm and we had this big yard and I could get that for you and you could ride it all over the place and that would be so much fun. I also wish I could get that for you. That would be fun. You're right. That would be so much fun. So it's totally recognizing that it's not dismissing the child's desire, but it's more like recognizing the child's desire and, you know, and I wish I could do that for you, but it's just not the reality. And so once they see that that's totally not the reality, they realize themselves that they're asking for something that's, you know, just not going to happen. So I think that, you know, we're not dismissing their desire, but we're empathizing with it. And we can kind of go with it and make an imagination thing of, you know, oh, if we only had da-da-da-da-da, you know. If I had $1 million, what's that song? You know? Yeah. I would buy you that cheap. You know. So there's also that. So there's modeling to them how we act towards them. Modeling chesed teaches them chesed, and also, like I said, modeling the chesed to your spouse. We're talking about chesed in general, and how we can inspire our children to be givers and not just takers, and how we can model chesed and teach them chesed. So also like with our spouses, let's say making them a helper and a part in doing something kind for your spouse. Oh, Abba just came home from work. Look how tired he is. Let's go get him a cup of water to drink. And then, you know, she can come with you or he can come with you into the kitchen. We're going to make a cup of water for Abba. And like, you know, come, let's go give the cup of water now to Abba. And even though he would spill it on the way, you can carry it by holding his hand. So this is his mitzvah. And then you give it to him and he can give to Abba the cup of water. Now he has learned to be empathetic towards Abba. Abba's tired, he just came home from work. We're going to do something about it that we can help and be kind. And I gave Abba a cup of water now to make him feel better. Tremendous lesson is learned, right? It's even if you don't involve the child in the task, but he or she sees you doing such things, it's also very beautiful and important for them to see. They don't always have to be involved in every little thing, but it is important for them to see you doing chesed for them and doing chesed for your spouse. I think that it's very important. They will learn a lot of lessons from that. They will learn a lot from seeing you be the role model. They look up to you as mommy and daddy very much. Or else are they going to learn it? This idea of empathize, of teaching empathy. This is at different ages and stages, they can empathize with the reality that others need things that they can help with. When it's a little child in the playgroup, so sometimes they want the toy that your child has, whatever, and sometimes you want them to give and share, and sometimes you feel like, well, they just got it. I don't want them to share right now. They don't have to share all the time. So of course, there's a balance, and we want to, create the right type of thing so that they're not just going to be schmatzes that are always giving, and then not taking care of themselves. So, I think that there's a certain amount of common sense that we do have to display, and that we have to teach them. But these are the kinds of things when you see that, let's say a child wants to have a different child, wants to have a turn doing something that they've been doing for a while, to give little Johnny a turn now because we've been doing this for a while. Now it's Johnny's turn. I think that that's a beautiful way of we have to show them that they have to also know you've had your time now and to be a giver to Johnny. Johnny wants also to play. Those are little examples in their world that are big things. We, one thing that came up Have you all seen this Jimmy Kimmel thing with
The Halloween candy?
the
I
Halloween
was
candy.
hoping you'd say that. So
I didn't see it this year, I saw last year.
horrible.
It's horrible.
Terrible.
It's horrible. Supposedly this is supposed to be funny. And he videotapes and challenges parents to tell their children that they have taken all their,
They ate all
they ate all of their Halloween candy. And to videotape the
The
child's
reaction.
reaction. And isn't this so funny, watching the kids totally fall apart and be angry with them and miserable and sad and all of this. And he goes and there's like, let's say, I don't know, 10 clips or whatever of these parents being really cruel to their kids. And I don't understand what is funny about it. I really don't. I really don't. I don't get it. I think that we're a sick society that thinks that that's funny. Why are we making fun of our, like, this is funny to make somebody else miserable? It's horrible, it's cruel. Frankly, I think that a lot of the pranks that we see on these like videos and things like that are very cruel. They have these whole TV shows of You've Been Punked or something like that. I don't know, Ashton Kutcher was doing something like that. I saw it one time. And this woman was like in tears and she thought like something was happened to her whole business or her whole house or her whole whatever. And it was like, oh, it's just a joke. Like, why is this funny? Why is this funny? We're making fun of something. We're being funny at somebody else's expense to be cruel. I find it to be just cruel. And frankly, there's also these videos that go viral of people doing stupid things, let's say, and getting very badly hurt. And that's also so funny, right? You know, this guy goes on a skateboard up this ramp, but he crashes and he falls and he bangs his head and he does. Some of the things are, what's funny is that people think that they can actually be like Superman and do things and are inconquerable and, you know, that they make such poor choices that they do some really stupid things. Maybe that's funny. But to see that they have failed in their pursuit of being wild risk takers and have really hurt themselves, why is that funny? Why is that funny? We're laughing at somebody else's pain? Why is that funny?
Can I put this out there?
Yeah.
So, because I hear you, because it's a total lack of empathy that makes it funny, you know. And my dad loves dark comedies like that. He loves like Home Alone, where they get hurt over and over again trying to break in the house. And he says, because he looks at me and goes, I've had days like that.
Mm.
And it's one of those, like, I've had days where it's just like, thing wrong, I try to do that, it totally backfired. And he finds, I think that he laughs at himself when he sees that stuff.
Okay.
Now, I don't really think that applies to Halloween candy and kids,
Right.
but he generally likes it when people get hurt because he's like, yes, I've been there, and he thinks it's funny.
Well, that's like there was a whole era of slapstick comedy
Right.
that kind of, you know, that was very physical humor.
Yeah.
And today we kind of look at it and like it's kind of stupid or whatever. It's a very physical comedy where, you know, the brothers, the Stooges, Three
Yeah.
Stooges, you know, hitting each other and banging each other and doing all these silly things, and we just think it's kind of ridiculous. But there was an era where that was a style of comedy that was very popular.
We twisted it. We've twisted it, and it's our, you know, our voyeuristic, you know, tendencies and our lack of empathy as a culture that has made it so popular. So I do think that it's deeply problematic, you know, that we can't feel what it's like to not only be these kids who feel like they worked hard for something, now it's gone, but also then are humiliated on national television afterwards.
And then viral on.
I think it's so horrible.
Yeah.
I mean, if somebody said to you, like, you know, you just, like, saved up for a BMW, and it's like, I just crashed it into the tree, and it's totally, like, wrecked. You're like, huh? Like, that was, like, my whole, like, years of working hard and saving and squirreling away money for that, and you, like, took it away. Like, that's funny? Who would be... Anyway, I don't think it's funny. So it's the opposite of what we're trying to teach our children with empathy. And the more that we can cultivate this idea of empathizing, then we can transfer that to our children wanting to do good and wanting to give and wanting to make someone else happy and more comfortable and more included. There are lots of, some of the ways we could do that is like there are a lot of children's books that are stories that, you know, have these kinds of messages in them. And those are very good stories to read to our kids, you know, bedtime stories. There were some children's books that I find completely pointless. And I really try to find children's books that have a message of good midos. They don't necessarily have to be Jewish books, although I think that a lot of the Jewish books tend to try to have a meaningful message in them and have some, and their names are Moishi and Sarala instead of, Johnny and Susie, so like it makes it Jewish, but,
There's
but,
one called
but
Effie Makes a
basically,
Friend, if anyone's interested. It's about a duck named Effie who makes a friend with another animal that's lonely. So my cousins love that book because it's Effie. Yeah.
Aww.
In Israel, the Waldo is
It's Effie, yeah, I know.
Wow.
Anyway, it's a cute book. It's about
Cute.
this duck that, is lonely, and this other duck, but there's a kid named Effie who makes friends with him.
Right. So there are a lot of books, whether Jewishly published, or just out there, but books that have messages for good midos, and those are the books that you want to keep your eye out for, not necessarily, the ones that have pop out things and things to do are good for textual, stimulation and all of that, but really spending time to look for good quality children's books that have good messages, that teach good values and good midos is something that we want to really keep our eye out for. And those are the good ones. Not, they're kids who are mean to each other and we see too much of that. There was a book, I'm trying to think, there was a book that I had for my kids whenever I had. I think it was like a devious thing that the kid was tricking the teacher in something, and it was like that was the story with and then they got away, and I was like, what is the lesson in this? That it's good to be a trickster and a conniver and so I actually took it and used it as a springboard to talk about how not to act because I was like kind of horrified, okay, that's not what that's not what we want.
Still a joy.
When we truly teach empathy and showing, teaching our children how to be a giver towards another child or another person or even an animal, we have there are examples of rescue animals and stuff like that. If we want to take in and do a chesed, it's also chesed. Teaching chesed is so important, and we have so many opportunities that we can teach that along the way. But we also want it to be that the child feels good about it. Sometimes we need to give a reward. Let's say they didn't really want to share their toy, whatever, But if we make it that, they have something else that they can go to that's also a positive, then there's a certain reward, or, we can take them for a treat or whatever afterwards. We have to be very careful, though, with rewarding our children for chesed that they do, that the reward does not become the motivator for the chesed. I always feel there is definitely a time and place for bribery with our children. But we also just have to be very careful with, how we're motivating our children. What are the motivators? We would certainly prefer that the reward be that you've made that other child feel so happy, and that in itself is the reward. But that's quite lofty for a little child. As they get older, that can be, instilled that in itself is the reward. The feeling good for making somebody else happy is a reward. And as we can say that from a young age to the child, and they'll start to get it. But it might have to be coupled sometimes with a more tangible reward. But sometimes the reward will be given after, not as the motivator for why they did the thing, but as a reward afterwards that they do get, something sweet or something fun or something positive in its stead. But like I said, just be very careful that the child does not take the reward as being the motivator. Then we've kind of undone the message that we're doing, because then it does become a selfish act. I'm only doing it for the reward. It means that it's still about me, and we want it to be really moving into to thinking about the other person. Let me see what else I jotted down here. Sometimes the reward is not something tangible, but also compliments and the smiles that we give to our children. Those are also rewards, right? Like I said before, children want to make you happy. So the endorsements that you give to your child for doing something positive can go a very long way. And sometimes you want to do that in front of other people. Do you know what Johnny did today? He gave his toy to so-and-so because she was crying, and he made her so happy. He made her so happy from giving that toy. I was so proud of him when he did that. And that's, of course, in earshot of the child, who now feels like, wow, my mom's like bragging about me. Like, I really did something so good. I'm like such a good kid. I am a giver. This can go such a long way. Sometimes that will be in front of their siblings. We can show, we don't want to make sibling rivalry, like, oh, you're always talking about how good Johnny is, But to reinforce these positive behaviors to them and in front of them to other people goes a very long way. This is also a very big reward for them. And of course, then this idea of, like I said earlier, the more you give, the more you are, this becomes more of their reality, where they are actually feeling like, I am a giver, I am a good kid, I am a good person, I am a mitzvah boy, I am a mitzvah girl, whatever. This is who I am. I'm doing these nice things. This is great. This is part of their self-esteem, and certainly we want to give them a strong sense of self-esteem, of that they're good. Talking about self-esteem. Oh, well, just before we talk about that, just another thing about giving. Rav Dessler, in Kesef or Miktam Eliyahu, talks about love and what is it to love, and to love is to give, and to give is to love. So it says the more you give, the more you love. You would think it was the opposite, because it kind of goes the other way too. The more you love somebody, the more you want to give them, right? But let's say you're feeling like not so loving. Your child's driving you crazy, they're having another tantrum, they're going nuts, and I'm not really feeling so loving right now. Now I want to get, out of my head, like how I'm always complaining about my kids because, they're fighting all the time, or blah, 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 and I'm kind of getting in a negative headspace about my kids. Now, I know that I shouldn't be negative, and I want to be more loving, but right now I am feeling upset and frustrated and aggravated and not so loving, So now how do I fix that? Because I don't want to be that mean mommy. I want to be the loving, amazing mommy. We want to work on ourselves too. So Rav Dessler has his recipe is the more you give, the more you love. So now, what can we do? We're going to be more giving and more loving to the child that's driving us crazy. When we give them of ourselves, we can't help but love them. When we give them things that make them happy, we're going to see that that's going to instill in ourselves more love towards them. And we're going to force ourselves, in a certain sense, to be more loving by the act of giving. This is how we're going to be more giving, more loving. So we're upset, we're angry, we're fed up with our child. We're always seeing the negative in the things that they're doing. They're driving us absolutely crazy. So what are the things that we can do? And we're going to look for the good. We're going to actually be very actively looking, catching them doing something right, and complimenting them, and praising them. And we are also, when we say something, we're talking to ourselves, we're hearing it ourselves too, we're programming our minds too. It's like a neuro-linguistic programming here, okay. And I'm saying how wonderful the child is. I'm saying to, little Susie, look at how you, let's give an example. Something that they would, usually they you give them something to eat, and they push you in and like, I don't want it, but something like that. And then so one time they're looking at it first, and then they maybe taste one, and kind of, Is it, like, let's say you want to reward them for not just pushing it away first, because already they're pushing it away. So, your first impulse is pushing it away again, But they actually looked at it, they actually tasted it first, and then they decided that they didn't want it. Well, that could be something that you can hang on to that. It was a little thing, very little, right? But I see that you really tried to like it. You tried it this time. And that was good that you tried it. And just maybe just reinforcing something positive that they've done, catch them doing something right. That will then, in your own mind, reinforce something that that you're catching them doing something good, that they're not always so bad. And for themselves, sometimes they get into a cycle of being negative. So now it's like you have to actively try to kind of reset the cycle. So by catching them doing something good and reinforcing that and complimenting them and praising them, you are breaking the cycle in your own mind of them being always negative and bratty. And you're also breaking the cycle for themselves. They're realizing, oh, I did something good. I am good. I can do something good. I'm not negative. I'm not a bad kid. So, there's sometimes we have to just really be actively looking for them doing something right. That is a very important thing. They'll continue trying to make you happy. They'll continue trying to do things that will make you happy. So the more that that you can give them that positive reinforcement, they will do it again. They'll do it more.
That's the story I was telling you at the first class with the training the whales.
Yeah.
That's how they train the whales. They wait for them to do something good, they reward it. If they do something bad, they just completely ignore it. They don't punish it, they don't reprimand, and they just wait for them to do something different where that can be rewarded, and then they reward it.
Right.
You said whales?
Yeah, at SeaWorld, that's how they train the whales.
You can't really reprimand a whale.
You can just smack it.
It's definitely a strategy that teachers use in classrooms for kids that struggle to do certain things, is making them a helper.
You highlight them
You
all.
highlight it.
Wow,
It goes a
Johnny,
long
you're doing
way.
such a great job. And then everybody else wants to get that praise.
Right.
It's great sometimes.
Right. Right, because we can have, we definitely have to reward good behavior. We want them to do that again. It's like, there's, basic conditioning, we want to train them to do things correctly,
Johnny's lining up. Yeah. Johnny's standing so quietly in the line, facing forward.
Right. Right.
They all become like that.
Yeah, actually, so you caught him doing something good, and it's like you're bringing it to his attention, you're bringing it to everybody else's attention. They all of a sudden feel like a superstar, and it's wonderful. It's like the best thing you can do. So giving a child self-esteem is part of that, and you're giving them a good sense of who they are, and that will lead to being a happy child. A happy child has good self-esteem, feels loved. So sometimes also, mommies and daddies get very busy. And one of the ways that, we have to show them love is also making time to show them that they're important. Like, let's say we're very busy on the phone with somebody, talking to a friend or something like that. It's very easy to, your kid is saying, mommy, it's like, just a minute. So there's definitely a time and place to say, just a minute, they have to learn to not interrupt and to let mommy have her conversation. There's another thing though, is to, there's that, and we can't keep, stopping and paying attention. We'll drive ourselves crazy, and it's not good, for the kids. But on the other hand, let's say an older child, or not necessarily, but let's say you're on the phone with somebody, and your spouse comes in with a child from preschool because they did the pickup that day, whatever, and they come in and you say, oh, I have to get off the phone right now. Someone said, Susie came home from playgroup now. And you get off the phone and you make time for them and you say, oh, I'm so happy to see you. How was you? Blah, 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 blah. You're showing the child a very good lesson of I am so important to them. I'm getting off, I'm stopping what I'm doing. I'm getting off the phone. I'm paying attention to them. This is also feeling that you're making the child feel very loved. A loved child has a good self-esteem, feels valued, and will themselves feel like they have more to give. A child who is feeling depleted themselves, that they don't have what they need as far as being loved and feeling a self-esteem, will have a harder time being a giver because they don't have that self-confidence. It takes a certain self-esteem and self-confidence to be a giving child, to be a giver in general, even a giving adult. So let me just, there was something that I wanted to go back to that I had jotted down here. Oh, about giving compliments. Sometimes we give compliments to our children, like, and they'll show us some kind of kushkushaya, as we call it in Hebrew, like, you know, some scribbles that they did on the paper, you know, and they're all proud, you know. So there's a certain, you know, like, depending on the age of the child, of course, you know, but there's a certain impulse to say, like, wow, you're such a good artist, oh my gosh, this is great, oh wow. So at certain stages, that is appropriate. Sometimes it's like, you know, now the child says, okay, so everything that I do, you can get that same reaction, like, you know, wow, so such a tzaddik, wow, you're such a great artist, wow, blah, 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 blah. A more effective compliment to give is to be more specific. Even if you'd have no idea what this scribble is supposed to be.
It's an airplane.
Yeah, we always say,
It's an
what is that? It's an airplane.
Yeah, definitely
You know.
ask them first before you assume it is something else.
Right.
That's beautiful, what is it?
It's always an airplane. That's all she wants to draw.
Because sometimes it's
But
not
kind of
even
being
really
specific
is.
with what is so great about it could be like the colors that you used, the way that you made those circles so round. That's beautiful. That was very careful. That took a lot of time and care to do that. Wow. Being specific in giving your compliment will go farther in reinforcing what's good about it, number one, because they'll know then what to replicate. Number two, will not be just, oh, anything I do, I'm great, but more specifically, understanding what they're doing that is great. Because to know that your mommy loves you no matter what, of course, is, you know, unconditional love. Of course, we all want to give that message that whatever they do, they are great. We love them, you know, whatever. But giving a specific compliment will go a very long way as well and farther. Because now, like I said, now they'll know what they did right. Because they don't always know what they did right, you know. So you want to be specific in the compliment so that they can have an understanding of what they did that was good and what they did that was right, and then of course that they can replicate it. So, so being kind of more specific in the compliment itself. Just trying to look at the time. Is it? Yeah. I don't know. Anybody have any like ideas or thoughts or real life experiences that they want to share about those kinds of things to
There were
add to it?
multiple things that we talked about today that just kept bringing to mind something that happened with Miriam yesterday. I mean, multiple things we talked about, because we kept her out until 11:30 Friday night, and
That was funny.
and with the time change already, we're already an hour behind now.
Right.
So we're here at Kiddush lunch, and we've prepped ourselves. We're like, we're gonna have to eat fast today because meltdown is coming. Meltdown came, you know. And it was one of those challenges where I'm in the middle of eating. She says, "Mommy, come play." I say, "I'm eating. You know, you're welcome to go play, or you're welcome to sit with me." And she has a meltdown, starts yanking it on me, and temper tantrum. What was definitely challenging about that moment is there were external forces. There were people who, you know, God willing, one day we'll have children, who had opinions about her behavior, and that was challenging because,
Yeah.
you know, like they're telling me, "Don't you give in," and "She's being a brat," you know, that sort of thing. And kind of like, and you're like, "She's really tired." I said, "She's really tired, and I actually think she has a right to feel the way she feels." And I said that. I don't know how much of that she understood, but I felt it was important to say that. Like, she's exhausted, and I think it's okay that she feels this way.
Mm-hmm.
And I also felt like it was okay to say, I'm in the middle of eating lunch and I'm not going to go to the back room right now.
Mm-hmm.
So it was this really tough negotiation, and she was very upset, and
Mm-hmm.
people were very upset. And then ultimately she got so upset that I was able to like scoop her up and bring her, and I like held her and cuddled her because she was tired.
Right.
It wasn't about going to the back room, it was about the fact that she's exhausted.
Right.
And so I was able to like take my last couple of bites and bench, and I just, sitting, benching in her ear. But what she needed was like the snuggle and the cuddle and the reinforcement that she is important, that I understand that she's tired.
Right.
And the hard part is that like, not everyone always understands that you're actually doing something here. It just looks like your toddler's having a meltdown and she's being a B-R-A-T. And that's what it looks like to outside people. And I think one of the big challenges is even if you do understand some of these concepts and you're implementing them, people don't get that. And they can have a lot of opinions.
Well, because they probably would get up out of their
they
seat and go to the
generally see her
bed
at her
just because they
absolute
wanted to
worst.
stop. I don't think so.
No, they
What
see,
did you think?
No,
I'm
but
saying they see her
Saturdays are
mostly on
hard.
Saturdays,
Wow.
right after
That's
she
when
stayed
she's
up all
overtime.
night on Friday.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I see. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and like
Most of during the week.
the couple hours that
During
people
the
see
week,
her,
she's-
that's generally the worst she is the entire week.
Yeah, it's true.
It's not her
I see
natural
her
schedule.
bedroom.
Right,
and
Saturdays,
she's a little off
yeah.
and
During the week she has a schedule. We throw it out the door on Shabbos. Shabbos, I mean, she's a little monkey, and then people have opinions about her. And the hardest thing is to just stay the course. To say, like, I understand her feelings. I'm going to tell her I understand her feelings. I'm going to still set boundaries. I'm going to, like, nurture and cuddle her. And the hardest thing is going to be that, like, people aren't going to get it.
Right. Right. It's very easy to judge other people's parenting skills before a person has had kids. I think that we all know.
I
I
judge
mean,
it the other way. I think you're doing such a great job. Like I judge it where I'm like, I wish I'm like her one day.
You just have to say, like, and sometimes you have no idea what you're doing. In that moment, I actually did. In that moment, I felt like I was handling it the right way, and it was embarrassing that she was throwing a temper tantrum, that people noticed it. But that time, I knew I was handling it the way that she needed to be handled. There are certainly times where I have no idea what I'm doing, and then it's even harder when other people have opinions about it. Because you definitely go back and forth.
it's hard.
And
You
I
have to pick your
also,
battles too.
Yeah.
There are times that you might have to get up.
Oh,
Like
there's-
she's not tired.
I mean,
or-
you've seen there are plenty of times when I'm like, I'm going into the back, guys, and I'm not happy
Of
about
course,
it. You can't
definitely.
always have your meal on your
Yes.
schedule.
Right.
But there's a fine line, Like it was pretty early into the lunch, and I wanted to eat a couple more bites, and I think it's
Right.
okay to say so.
Right.
And there are times when I know, like, I've been loitering, and like I'm really into my thing, and I just don't want to move, and like sometimes you have to get over that too, because.
We went to Target yesterday and we took her and she was in the baby carrier and she was wrapped up and she was warm. And the lady at the cashier, she's like, oh my God, you're taking a little munchkin outside at this cold. And we're like, yeah, but she's wrapped and
We got
and she's
so
like,
much.
you're the worst parents ever.
I know.
And
Somebody
she's like,
said that?
yeah, it was like a laugh in her, like, but she's.
We got
we're
that
like,
all
right?
the time.
We're like,
You're
all right, okay.
Thanks for judging me for
Yes,
I can't, that's,
we'll just walk away now. Oh my God.
you get all
And
kinds of.
Obviously, I don't think we're
that's
the
all
first
right, you're
parents, but
smiling at that.
Such a thing to say.
yeah, and you think about it, and you come home and you're like, are we the first parents? I mean, maybe it is a cold, but she was wrapped, and I mean, just going. I mean,
Right.
so you kind of like in a battle, like.
Especially, like new parents, there are definitely a lot of insecurities. You're not always, you're not like, oh, I've got 7 kids, like I know what I'm doing already, leave me alone. No, like you're kind of new at all this stuff, and so like I think this is right. Seems okay,
Yeah.
and then like somebody shoots a horrible statement like
I
that.
was like-
It's natural to feel certain insecurities.
You didn't even know this person either.
that-
They didn't really know you. It's
People
just-
definitely can be very judgmental, and it's very hard not to be taking it personally and not to take it seriously. And it's very hard, and you have to sort of build your armor around yourself and be like, no, I'm okay. I'm doing all right. This is fine.
So now I told her, now it's like, it's gonna be colder, so, we're preparing her, we're, how did he say it? We're,
Getting her used to it.
yeah, making her stronger.
Yeah.
I think she kind of shut up.
Right,
I probably would have told her to mind her business.
is your suggestion
I
that you
just
just
never
keep
speak
her
up like that.
inside for all of winter? Like,
Yeah.
is that your
But that's
suggestion?
not,
Yeah.
If that
it's
was the
very
case,
common
we
to
should
get
be
these
bears. And we
Really?
should not
oh,
be
you're
humans.
breastfeeding? Are you breastfeeding here? Are you breastfeeding there? Are you breastfeeding at
Why
home?
aren't you
Blah, blah,
breastfeeding?
blah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Come on, that's not good for your child.
Yeah, everybody
we
has
were just
comments.
we were just talking about that actually. Yesterday. Mike and I were like, we're at a good spot, for this and this. But as soon as kids come along, I'm sure every family member is gonna have an opinion of why are you doing this.
Oh yeah, we were talking about that.
I'm
on
not
the
even
show.
talking about random people, but like family members.
And it hurts more when it's family members because you actually do care what they think.
Until they've
It is more
been
important
too
to you.
critical and then you just like,
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, when I lived in Israel and everybody's your mother. and everybody is your grandmother, and everybody knows better. It's like the pluses and minuses of having everybody being a happy family is that everybody has a right to like tell you how to parent your child. It can be kind of overwhelming. One of the things that you were saying about sometimes a child is hungry or tired and that's why they act out. It's very important to know, like sometimes it's like you can be so exasperated with your child and then you start to like kind of wait, take a minute. They're worst when they're hungry or when they're tired, and there is a pattern actually. There is a method to the madness, like oh, okay, so I know that when she acts like so I have to be number one more diligent in carrying around food or snacks or whatever with me so that she doesn't get to that point of being too hungry or too tired. Too thirsty, one of the things so I can, prevent the whole crash, meltdown, whatever. And to notice that, and to also be dan l'kafschus, we give the benefit of the doubt to our friends. We have to do that for our children too, right? And we have to say, like, it's not just like they're these bratty kids, but that they actually have a reason that why they're having the meltdown is because they have a real need, and they're too young to really know what it is that's bothering them or why they're being bothered, why they're more sensitive. I mean, as women sometimes, we're more moody or affected certain times of the month or whatever, and we kind of feel like we have the right to be all crabby, but whatever. And it's like no, but it's it's because I'm at this time of the month. Oh, like that's a reason. Well, they have their reasons too. Just as we make excuses for ourselves, we have to also make excuses for our children and understand that it's not coming from out of the blue, but there are a lot of times there are good reasons for why they're acting the way that they're acting.